Hello, welcome to The Laughter Effect, the podcast in which we explore and celebrate the relationship, the lifelong relationship with comedy and laughter of a special guest. And we have a very, very, very special guest today. We have Tracy-Ann Oberman, who I must admit, I knew you had a history with comedy, but when I started to explore it, I was like, oh God, she's prolific, bugger. So I've spent a lot of time reading about this. But before we get on to all that, let's go back to the very, very beginning. So we want to talk about the genesis of your relationship with comedy and laughter. In the Oberman household, who was the first person who made you laugh?
My dad was really funny. He was really dry. And I had an uncle, Uncle Philip, Uncle Pippi, who was, when I was growing up, he was the one that was into the goodies and into the goons and into, he was just the cool one, cool Uncle Philip. And so he was the one that got us into, we used to watch the goodies on a Friday night and all the kind of Monty Python stuff. And he loved all of that. So I think he was quite an influence.
And what sort of humour was his own humour? Was it sort of cheeky? Was he like the cheeky uncle? He'd sort of like, make rude noises or whatever. What sort of stuff was he making you chuckle with?
Sort of surreal and satirical, and like I say, he loved Monty Python. And whenever I'd stay over at my grandma's, he was like the cool younger uncle. And sometimes I'd sleep in his room, and my sister would sleep in my mum's old room. And his room was covered in Monty Python posters and really funny kind of sort of Python-esque stuff. And I think that really influenced me.
Right. Okay.
And what I remember watching the goodies, not quite understanding it because I was young, but I remember finding it very, very funny with the big cat on the
the post office
on the
tower.
post office tower, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think he was a really big influence when he used to listen to Woody Allen and the stand-up years and stuff like that.
Yeah, we were talking about speaking about this. I came quite late to Woody Allen's stand-up, but I thought it was absolutely fascinating because it was almost all in the delivery with Woody Allen. If you actually read it back, it was sort of like, no, I don't get it. There was one about the rabbi and he had to go to the rabbi and get permission to do a vodka commercial, and he said no, and then the rabbi ends up doing the vodka commercial, etc., etc. But it was wonderful. And Jackie Mason.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. Jackie Mason was a family staple. I have to say the Woody Allen stand-up years, if you ever read or listen to Without Feathers and all of that stuff, the sort of thing about the stand-up about the moose. I went to a costume party. I just, that one, I went as a moose, and then the one where he gets picked up by the Ku Klux Klan. I absolutely brilliant stuff. And Jackie Mason was always sort of, because they wrote truths about what it was like to be, I guess, to be in a Jewish family, and they'd write observational stuff. But I always think the best humor comes out of truthful observation. Yeah. So sort of, but we'll get on to what I hate comedy-wise.
Absolutely. School. Was there a class clown at school? Who made you laugh at school?
Well, I hated school, I have to say, and there wasn't that many lols. So I think if the nearest things, I was quite a class clown, just because you had to get through it. I think there was a girl called Elizabeth Kennedy who was absolutely obsessed with David Bowie and actually looked like David Bowie at the time. She was very funny, but again, it was less the pranks, and it was more like people that were very funny with words always got. So I can't remember who the class clown was. I think I was funny, but and I say that in that I made myself laugh. I can't remember everybody else, but I can't. I don't think there was a class clown.
No.
Grim years.
Grim years. What about your parents? Sorry, we should have touched on that just before. What sort of, you talked about your uncle, but your parents, what sort of, was your mum a funny person? Because usually they're different. Usually the mother is a bit more sort of whereas the father might be a bit more sort of cheeky or irreverent.
So my dad was really funny, but he was really funny, but dry, very, very dry.
Yeah.
And my mum was more observational comedy. But I would say that the main humor, and my grandma, my mum's mum, was just have this dry sense of humor. I mean, it was all the way. Do you remember the other thing, the main influence, I would say more than my parents, I can't really remember what their humour was. I guess Jackie Mason, but it was always Uncle Philip that had his finger on the pulse. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there was, I'm trying to think, oh yeah, do you remember Kenny Everett
yeah,
and Captain Kremen and all of
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
All of that kind of surreal, brilliant, out there stuff. I think my parents liked, they used to watch, oh, Stanley Baxter,
Yeah,
really good character comedy.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
Just, I think it was always about the performance and the truth of the character observations.
Yeah, and he used to do the Queen, and it was all that sort of thing. He used to get basically sketches that would last an entire episode, which was
Absolutely.
fantastic. And he died fairly recently, I think.
I
Something like
know,
that. So,
he was brilliant. And the two Ronnies were big in our household.
yeah,
Again,
yeah,
really, clever sketches, observational.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
So let's move on to drama school, if we may. You went to the Central,
I did. I went to university for 4 years
did you?
beforehand, and then
Okay.
yeah, I did.
Wow.
I did. My dad was going ballistic because I did 4 years at uni, and then I did 3
Okay.
years at drama school, and my dad was going, "You could have been a doctor after all this. What the hell?" So they were freaking out, but in those days you got a grant for all of it, thank God, and I sort of worked
Yeah.
I had to sort of work at weekends to fund it, but um, yeah, no, at university, that really honed my comedy skills because on my first day at Leeds University, I was doing a classics degree. Lots of jokes in classics. Do you know that,
Yeah.
James? You
Really?
see? Oh, yeah.
Really?
Aristophanes, one of the funniest playwrights ever written. Do you
Well,
say whoever wrote? And Plautus and the Satyricon. That's the original comedy as far as I'm concerned. Um, and
in
then
all, in all, but in all seriousness, did
mm,
any of that actually make you laugh inwardly, outwardly? Was it, because again, the length and breadth of my knowledge when it comes to philosophers is the Monty Python philosopher's song. Aristotle was a bugger for the bottle, etc. So you're going to have to enlighten me.
Immanuel Kant was a giant pissant.
Was
Yes,
it?
yes,
Yeah, I drink,
absolutely.
therefore I am.
Yeah, I
Yes.
do. um, those early classics
Yeah.
were so a really seminal moment in our household is do you remember when Channel 4 started and they used to
Yeah.
show
Hey,
films late at night, and I remember sneaking
the
down.
triangle with a
It,
triangle in the
yeah.
top right hand corner or something.
And I used to sneak downstairs and watch telly because I never slept. And I found this film. I just remember switching it on and thinking, what the hell is this? And I laughed and laughed and laughed. I must have been about 12, 13.
Yeah.
Completely changed my view. I said the next day to my dad, I saw something last night and it was brilliant. And it was called The Producers.
Oh
And he
wow.
went, that's one of my favourite films, and that brought me and my dad really close together. And he
Oh,
went out and he got
fantastic.
he got the Betamax of it. We put it on and we watched it. So that became like that sort of set in stone,
Yeah.
a kind of template of the kind of humour, that kind of Mel Brooks humour.
So you got
Weird, yeah,
a comedic bond with your father via Mel Brooks. That's amazing. That's
absolutely.
fantastic.
And then Blazing Saddles, and that was absolutely the bond I had with my dad. We just got that sort of that same humor. But having said that, when I then went on to study classics for A level, and we were looking at things like Aristophanes, the frogs, and just like I say, the Satyricon, and all these brilliant comedic satirists at the time in
Yeah.
Rome. Well, as long as you understood the reference, you realised that it was like watching Spitting Image of ancient Greece. It was so clever, properly made me laugh. I mean, I have to say, The Frogs is one of my favourite plays because of if you get the it's like Spitting Image of
Yeah.
ancient Greece.
Wow. When did you start? What came first, performing or writing comedy?
Oh gosh, performing, absolutely performing. I had a gang of friends when I was growing up. There was me, Richard Matthews, and Ashley Broder, and we were doing like sketches, just all of us, I have to say, way before sketch shows had come on. We were really young, like 11, 12, 13, and we were we were writing, and I wish we were in the world that we were in now because we would, number one, stuck it immediately on social media, and number two, probably would have got ourselves a series on, E4. We were good. We were very good, but you just didn't do it in those days. So I went down much more the classical performance route.
Yeah.
So after university, on my first day at university, I ran into a man called Alistair McGowan outside the Raven Theatre. And this
Wow.
bloke stopped me and went, do you want to come in and audition? And I said, well, what are you doing? He said, we're doing Dr. Faustus. He said, but you've got really great hair. I had big curly hair. He went, come in. So I met him, auditioned for that, and joined the Raven Theatre company, which have you a lesser known writer called who writes The Crown? Oh my gosh, brain fog.
The
Him.
Crown. Oh yeah, because yes, him.
Him,
Should
brilliant.
know, but him,
Like,
brilliant.
him. Oh
Yes,
my
yeah.
gosh. How soon we forget. Anyway, he was in there as well as a young director. So I met all these
Wow.
amazing, very funny, really talented people, including Alistair. So that started off my performance thing. I left and then went to do drama at Manchester, which came, and part of the legacy of that drama department at Manchester was Rick Mayall, the young ones, Roland Joffe, all these incredible writers.
Yeah.
Went straight to the Royal Shakespeare Company, and so was much more of a sort of performer, but always had this interest in stand-up and comedy. So I would say that the acting came first and then the comedy.
Right. Okay. Do you remember? So when you were writing, was it sort of sketches you were writing? Was it jokes? Was it observational humour?
Observational humour and sketches.
Right.
And so
okay.
that was a sort of thing. But I loved going to stand-up comedy, and I remember when the comedy store started, and then because I was so interested in it, even when I was at the RSC early on, I did a course, a stand-up comedy course with
Did you?
Jill Edwards. I did, because I wanted to understand the mechanics of it. And I used to go to a place called the Meccano Club every Tuesday, where these great comedians like Paul Merton and Eddie Izzard and all the great and the good would come and do their tryout material
Yeah.
every Tuesday. And the idea with that course was you had to go and watch stand-up 4 times a week and really try and work out what made a good set and what didn't. So that was a very interesting. And out of that, I got the confidence to start writing comedy.
And have you ever done stand up?
I did it 3 times
Wow.
and I hated it. It was the
Really?
most, yeah. I mean, it was the most frightening thing. In those days, that there just weren't any female stand-ups.
No.
No, there really wasn't. I mean, Josie Lawrence was the nearest thing to it, and she did the impro,
Yeah.
French and Saunders, but you just didn't have stand-up comedians then, female stand-ups. And if you did, they got so much abuse. It was quite a world to go into. The thing about doing that course was you ended up writing your own set, and then you'd have to go out and do it a few times. So
Yeah.
I did go out and do it, and I got bookings, but I found it so odd being up there, as myself and not a character. The alchemy of acting is always being with at least a other person on stage. So you've got a connection with somebody. So to stand up there completely on your own, with your own material, with your worldview, not even a character to hide behind, I found it actually made me physically sick, and I'm not somebody that gets frightened easily.
Wow. Flipping heck.
So I did it 3 times, and I thought I can't do this anymore.
That was a long time ago. Is it something you'd ever consider now that the landscape has changed and there are hundreds, thousands of extraordinarily good female comics? Is it something you'd ever go back to?
I realized early on that there is a very different psychology between a stand-up and an actor. It might be different now, but in my observation and my experience, I don't think I've got the. I don't think I know I have absolutely no desire to get up there on my own with my own material. Maybe like a
Okay.
one-woman show, or maybe something that I'd written as a narrative, but
Yeah.
I don't think just standing up and sort of talking. I look at Sarah Silverman and I think she's brilliant, but I think I'm much more in the Madeline Kahn vein of
Oh.
comedy who is
Oh.
my absolute
Yeah.
icon.
Ditto.
No,
Ditto. Oh yeah. No. She's one of the funniest human beings who's ever walked the earth. She really, really is. She's incredible. Much missed. When you got let's get to the Central School of Speech and Drama. What how did comedy manifest itself with it? Was it part? Did it play much part within the curriculum? Were you doing much comedy, or was it mainly sort of straight theatre, drama, musicals?
well, having come out of a very, very, I guess we'd call it woke drama department,
Yeah. All right.
where it was you couldn't say ploughman's lunch, you had to say plough person's lunch.
Right.
That's the
Gotcha.
level of, if the wokies think they're woke today, I mean, we're talking beyond. You couldn't. what did we do? We ended up boycotting our own play at the National Student Drama Festival, which was it was funded by SOGAT that were on strike, and we boycotted the play. And then we realized that the play we'd boycotted was our own play. So then we had to have a meeting as to whether we should cross our own picket line, James, which we narrowly won by one vote. I mean, it was just pathetic. So,
Incredible.
I know, I look at the machinations of now, I think, kids, you haven't got a clue.
No idea.
No idea.
No idea.
The politics of that was ridiculous. So then I went to Central School of Speech and Drama, or the Central School of Screech and Trauma, as I like to think of it, thinking, here we go. I've got out of the sort of very, very anti-lovey, anti-comedy drama world of my university, which was like, we're doing it for the miners. Those poor miners, it was during the miners' strike. We used to take, I think they just wanted to have some food parcels, some alcohol, and some blankets. And I used to sort of say that in the meetings, but we used to take them Clifford Odets Waiting for Lefty for a midnight show, or I don't know, some Bertolt Brecht. And it was like, these poor men and women really don't want to watch this at 12 o'clock at night, but we're doing it for the minders. So that was really hysterical. So I joined Central thinking, now we're there. It's like, and also when I was doing drama, if you said you wanted to do any sort of performance without a political agenda, it was, what's the point of that? It's appalling. No. Absolutely not. So I joined Central thinking, bring it on, Louise. And we had a new head of department who was even more radical than Central, than university. And suddenly I found myself in an environment that was not into performing at all. He'd make you do plays, but you'd have to go and study, the politics behind Juno and the Paycock. It was a really, really odd training. And it was all about sort of doing plays. They cut tap dancing, they cut the dance, they sort of almost cut the vocal, and they went very political, which was a little bit like continuation. So no, not many lols there either.
Not much Ray Cooney then.
Not even Ray Cooney, no.
No farce.
I think we did Plunder by, I can't remember who wrote that. In the third year.
Ben Travers.
We did Ben Travers. I'm trying to think any other comedies. Graham Norton was 2 years above me, 2 years above me. And I remember this was a comedy. They did a production of The Seagull where somebody had forgot to put the gun in at the end that Constantine shoots himself. And so I remember the actor, I think it may have been Graham, was in that production, and the guy was hunting through the drawer and he only found a ruler and he had to go off and ruler himself to death. So I remember that was quite...
That's brilliant.
It was. So, again, not many lols in that department. It took itself very seriously. The men were all obsessed with Robert De Niro, and you used to see them looking in the mirror going, you're looking at me, you're looking at me. It was all very Taxi Driver. And the women they just needed to get skinny.
So if you met somebody who was overtly humorous in those days, they'd have stuck out like a sore thumb. Who within your friendship group made you laugh the most during those days, if anyone?
Well, I was in the wrong year because the year above had some really great comedians, but the year below was incredible because they had Catherine Tate.
Wow.
And I loved Catherine, and I remember thinking, I wish I was in her years. She is bloody brilliant. So Catherine, I think, sort of broke the mold. That was a very funny year. I can't remember if there was anybody hilarious in my year. Julian Ryan-Tutt was the year below, and he was always very funny and very dry. But Catherine was the one, comedy-wise.
Okay. What was the first job? It doesn't have to be comedy. Your first job when you came out of drama school?
I left drama school. I was one of the lucky ones. I had an agent, and I remember on my first day, going up for an advert for After Eights. I got a phone call that afternoon saying, they don't think you're right for the visuals, but they'd like you to come back in and do the voiceover. I was like, what's the voiceover? They then called me and Simon Cadell.
Cadell, wow.
I know. And I had to go. I still remember it to this day. I had to play the character in the advert going, Harry's such a poppet. After Eights, it is the after dinnerment after all. And ka-ching. And that gave me a great big wad of money. And then the next day I went out for another advert. They don't tell you that at drama school when you're doing, Chekhov and Hedda Gabler.
Yeah.
And I got that as well, and that was for Ariel Liquid. And I remember thinking, wow, gosh, I actually earned quite a wad of money, which was
Yeah.
exciting in those days because it was, it was really quite interesting. And then I got the Royal Shakespeare Company about 4 days after that, which those adverts paid for me to
Yeah.
do, because
Right.
the RSC in those days referred to reduced salary cut. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of funded it.
Yeah, I did a book with Tim West a couple of years ago before he died, obviously, about his marriage to Prue, and he was saying how her doing the Tesco's adverts basically allowed them to do all this theatre that otherwise, they wouldn't. So is that still the case now? Would you take a certain job to enable you to go and do something, art for art's sake type thing?
Yeah, well, there's an expression, isn't there? One for the meal, one for the real. And
Right. Okay.
you'll often take a job for the meal
Yeah.
ticket in
Okay.
order to fund the
And why
passion
not?
project.
Why the hell not?
Absolutely.
Why the hell not?
And that doesn't mean you don't give it 100% of your time and attention, but there are conscious jobs that you think, oh, that's actually will fund. I think I just saw an interview with Indira Varma, who said she'll often do television jobs because it will fund her to be able to do the theatre jobs that she loves.
Right. Comedy.
Oh yes,
Comedy.
sorry.
No. I was the one who went over there. So now we're back here. So your first job in the genre of comedy, because I've got down here one of the. It goes back 90s. I know that Bob Martin was one of your first bigger roles. Is that correct?
My first comedy on television job. So in those days, the industry was very boxed. And because I'd gone straight to the Royal Shakespeare Company, it was hard for me to be seen for television stuff because they'd say, oh, she's a classical theatre actress. But I remember being seen for a comedy, which was a remake of Mad About You in America. And it was called Loved by You. And John Gordon Sinclair was in it with, can't remember who else, but I got the part of the secretary.
Right.
With Oscar James. Yeah. And so I was in 3 or 4 of that. So that was my first ever sitcom. And in those days, when you did sitcoms, it was often filmed in Nottingham in the studios there. And you did it in front of a live studio audience.
Right.
So, and then that continued me doing a few episodes of Kiss Me Kate. And I did loads and loads and loads of comedies for, was it ATV or Carlton in those days?
Yeah.
And those sitcoms were, like I say, all filmed in front of a live audience in Nottingham. And I think I even, that's how I met Indira. I even got my own, I think I did a couple of pilots for ones that I was sort of leading. So that sort of entered me into the world of sitcom. So that started, and then Bob Martin came along, and Bob Martin was a remake written by brilliant Jeff Pope, and who the other one was, Bob. What was Bob?
I should know.
You should know.
I should know.
Jeff Pope and Bob.
And Bob. Jeff and Bob. Jeff,
like genius writer, Jeff.
Yes.
Who is like the most prolific and brilliant writer. So they wrote a remake, a British version of Larry Sanders, which was about a sort of a game show host and then the behind the scenes. And it was for ITV. No, it wasn't. Was it for Channel 4 or ITV? Anyway, we did it. ITV did it, and it starred Michael Barrymore as a troubled game show host. We did 2 series. We were about to do a 3rd series, and little did they realise that life was imitating art, where their troubled game show host was even more troubled in real life.
Yeah, and then it imploded.
And then that imploded. Yes, but it was a bloody good cast. Keith Allen, me, Michael, obviously, and Dennis Lawson, and just people coming in. The idea of people coming in to play themselves. Jamie Theakston played Jamie Theakston. Terry Wogan came in to play Terry Wogan. Eamon, lots of really interesting people. Rob Brydon came in for a small part. A lesser known Rob Brydon in those days. But I
still
always
with a voice.
But still with a voice. And I remember doing comedy. What did I do that Naira Parks, who owned Big Talk at the time, I did something with them. I did a sketch show with Paul Kay. I suddenly got into doing loads of sketch shows. I did Big Train, and I was doing a sketch show. We'll talk about that in a minute. With Lenny Henry and Simon Pegg, Catherine Tate, Rebecca Front, Kevin Eldon. I mean, the sort of great and the good, Mark Heap, brilliant Mark Heap. But I remember getting called in to do a pilot with Paul Kay my lovely friend Paul Kay, they were giving him his own sketch show with a very nobody had heard of him comedian called Ricky Gervais, who came in to do a couple of the sketches. And I remember Ricky talking about, he was very funny and very dry and cynical, and talking about this thing he was writing with Anil Gupta. And that turned out to be The Office.
Flipping heck.
So
Wow.
I was very much part of those early years of a lot of those comedians sort of up and coming.
The Lenny Henry series, that actually ran for 3 years, didn't it? Pieces? Lenny Henry in Pieces?
Lenny Henry in Pieces, and I was filming that at the same time as Big Train. So that was very odd. So I was going from this very surreal sort of comedy show, which was quite culty and quite cult hit, and doing Lenny's at the same time. So Lenny Henry was really interesting. It was Lenny's sketch show. Who were the regulars? Tony Gardner, Omid Jalili, me, and I can't remember who else, but I think that was the sort of main bulk of it. And it was just Lenny's sketch show.
And were you writing by this time? Were you just performing?
Just performing, but sort of adding bits and pieces as we went along. I remember there was a really funny sketch that we did about a divorce, that my character and Lenny's character were a divorced husband and wife, and there was a sketch that always began with him bringing the kid back after a weekend visit, and it was very dark and very funny.
And I was going to ask about radio now, because I mean, that's, if I had to pick a genre, a medium, radio is always my choice, my first choice. That's been quite a fertile ground for you, comedy wise, hasn't it?
The great and much missed Bill Dare, when I was on the radio, when I was doing loads of radio. I've done 700 radio dramas, comedy series, sketch shows over the years. Yeah, and I write a lot for them as well. In fact, I just did a reading in a theatre last night of one of the plays I wrote about the making of The Graduate, called Mrs. Robinson, I presume. So I remember carrying one of my drama scripts, I think it was a Pinter, and Bill Dare running out of the corridor, the comedy corridor, because you had a drama corridor and a comedy corridor. He stopped me and he went, "Can you do accents and voices?" And I said, "Yes." He went, "I think I need you." And he brought me in to one of his sketch shows to play, I can't remember what it was at the time, but I remember playing all these different characters, and we did it live in the radio theatre. And afterwards he came up to me and he said, "You are really good at comedy. Why have I never met you before?" And I said, "Oh, don't know." And he said, "You're going to have a big career in comedy." And he then continued to use me again and again. On the back of that, I ended up doing The Way It Is with Anil Gupta, long before The Office, which was a sort of very early sketch show of Rolling News, which was really good, with Simon Evans and Sanjeev Bhaskar and Dave Lamb. And I think maybe Ricky just came to watch it. But so that we did that for loads of series. And then we even I think we did it as a TV pilot as well. And so radio was really, I worked with the great Sean Locke.
Yep.
We did 15 Stories High.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Amazing.
I love that. Absolutely fantastic.
And again, with Pete Serafinowicz, amazing cast, Benny Wong. But the brilliant thing about working with Sean was I was the only woman that did all those radio shows, and he'd write all these female parts. But I remember coming in one day for a rehearsal, we were doing it in front of the audience, and I said, "Sean, I'm playing 14 women who are all from South London. How am I meant to make them all sound different? Can I do, I don't know, a South African accent, a Northern accent?" And he went, "No, they've all got to be from South London." So, that was a good it was good training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it was very fertile ground for me. And on the back of doing all those radio comedies and sketch shows and all of that stuff, and the dramas, I sort of learnt how to write for radio, because it's a medium that I love as well. In those days, some of the great comedies coming out of Radio 4 were creating television. So Goodness Gracious Me, there was a series called all the big comedy was started off on Radio 4.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your favourites? I mean, I'm a big fan of Ed Reardon's Week, always have been. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I did think did they try and put that on TV? No, I'm not sure. I don't think they have. It's one of the few that they haven't, but it's been going for donkey's years. Cabin Pressure, I always adored.
Loved it.
I love John Finnemore. Do you have any favourites? Any favourites from back when you were younger and now?
Well, I love Sean Locke. I love 15 Stories High, which was genius. I did a I'm trying to think of all the comedies that I did or that I loved. I've always liked Charles Paris. Do you ever listen to those? No. James Front, really good, really funny. We did a series actually with that the Fronts wrote, Jeremy Front and Rebecca, called Jack and Millie recently, which was
Okay.
very, very funny that we did. Me and Harry Peacock were in. When I'm trying to think of the other favourite radios, Edward and I love. Oh my gosh, there was a really weird one that I love called The House of the Spirit Levels
Yeah.
that Nick
Yeah.
Revel wrote years ago. Very
Yeah.
surreal and very out there. I love the original Goodness Gracious Me on Radio 4.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm sure more will come. Oh, and actually my favourite of all time is, which created so many brilliant writers, all who seem to move into succession, writing Succession, Simon
Yeah.
Blackwell, Tony Roche,
Yeah.
was a thing which is a take of all the Sunday newspapers, which was called the Sunday Format. Do you remember the Sunday
I
Format?
don't. I
Oh,
heard of it, but I need to be
James, you would
straight
love
onto.
it. You would love
Simon
it.
Blackwell is a bit of a
Oh my
is
God.
a bit of a hero of
A
mine.
hero,
So
and Tony Roche and Paul Schlesinger
yeah.
produced it, and
Paul
John
Schlesinger.
Morton wrote it. I mean, it was genius because it was, things like an airing cupboard of my own. And it was sort of took all the crap of those Sunday papers and all that nonsense in the lifestyle section, which particularly in those days was just terrible. The different kind of salts you could, and it turned it into a sort of radio show. And if you find it anywhere, that was one of my favorites. It was called the Sunday Format.
The Sunday Format. One thing I'm fascinated by your career is that you've done so much in comedy, but you're not known as a comedy actress. You're somebody who acts in comedy, or an actor, sorry, or whatever you're supposed to say these days. But what are you supposed to say? Seriously.
Well, Dorothy Parker always said, scratch an actor and you get an actress. So in my opinion, we're all actresses. Everybody who performs
Fine,
is an
let's stick
actress.
with actress. So we'll go by but you haven't. I think somebody said the other day, we was talking about Michael Sheen. They said one of the reasons he's such a good actor is because he can be portraying, Dylan Thomas, Brian Clough, whoever, and one never clouds the other at all. You're completely, that's who he is. And I think it's amazing the amount of comedy you've done. You can dip out, you can go and do drama. Abby, are you ever fearful of being sort of typecast? Do you monitor what you're doing? I'm not doing too much of this, not doing too much of that.
Well, I do think I've been very lucky in that I never got myself stuck in any one bracket because
Yeah.
I guess I'm a multi-hyphenate because I write. I write a lot of plays. I do a lot of drama. I do a lot of theatre, particularly now. I do a lot of classical theatre. I do a lot of drama, but I do a lot of comedy. So if you think that in any one year, at one point I was doing Friday Night Dinner, Toast of London,
Yeah.
Code 404, at the same time as doing It's a Sin, and doing something doing Merchant of Venice 1936. So
Yeah.
I think that there's something really good in that because I have a very varied and interesting career, and so I'm never bored.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you're across lots of different genres, you don't rise to the top of any one genre. So people are always surprised that I know so many people and grew up with so many of the comedy world, but I never really became one of those comedy voices, but I was very much part of the pack, if you see what I mean. And similarly
Yeah.
in the drama world, I was always very much part of that pack, and theatre world, but I could jump between all of them. I was never in or sort of stuck in any one genre.
Do you find one more fulfilling than the other? What are the pluses and minuses of both?
They're so different. It's like saying, chocolate versus a piece of fruit. Oh, actually, I know what I'd say, chocolate, of course. Ridiculous metaphor. They're very different. And I've always tried to do a play or two a year as well as doing television, and I'm doing a lot more because I'm creating a lot more of my own work now. So coming up, I've taken Noel Coward's Present Laughter, which is
Yes.
a brilliant comedy about an aging kind of middle-aged actor who's behaving appallingly, and I've taken it and I've turned it into a very bad middle-aged female actress. I've taken it out of 1939. I've set it in Studio 54 days in New York.
Oh wow.
And I think
Fantastic.
that's going to be a very that's a real passion project of mine. So I really hope people will come and see that.
Where and when?
That will be starting in Bath. We call it the Waitrose Tour. It starts
Yeah.
in Bath. Anywhere there's a Waitrose, it's a lovely. So that's doing a nationwide tour
Yeah.
for about 8 weeks. Starts
It
in
could,
Bath at the end of August. We
right.
go all over Liverpool, York, Chichester, Cheltenham, Oxford,
Oh,
just
definitely.
Malvern, all over.
Definitely coming to
Coming
that.
definitely. Oh, I'm very
Definitely.
near you. I'm in
Yeah.
Liverpool. I think Leeds, and then hopefully we'll see
I'm
if it
in
comes
Leeds,
into the West.
so yeah, I'm in Leeds, so yeah,
Can you get to
perfect.
York easily?
Yeah, of course I can.
You're
Yeah,
coming
it's.
to York to review it,
I'd love
James.
to. I'd love to, because I remember seeing one of the first plays I saw actually on YouTube. It was from what's the theatre on the Strand, the Vaudeville,
Yep.
and it was Donald Sinden playing Gary,
Yes.
and Dinah Sheridan, who was in it, Gwen Watford was in it, and it's absolutely fantastic. I love that play.
I love Noel Coward. He's witty, witty, witty. His
Yeah,
observations, he was like a Seinfeld in a way. His observations about the people that he knew. There's a little bit of Toast of London in there. It's very good. But I just sort of like I did with The Merchant of Venice, 1936. I always like to reclaim these plays, and
yeah,
I just always try and put a female perspective. And I just think, well, why shouldn't I wrote a play about Mae West.
absolutely. Yeah,
I'm really interested in Liza Minnelli's life at the moment, and Halstead and Joan Collins and all these these actresses who were all really badly behaved. Mae West wrote and produced all her own work. She slept with any man that she wanted to sleep with. She was incredibly powerful in her own career. But what's the thing everybody fears, particularly as a woman, is getting older, becoming irrelevant. So I put that lens on this play and set it in the sort of world of Studio 54, which has given it a nice little edge.
that's fantastic. Genuine. I honestly can't wait for that. That is going to be superb. Is there any kind of comedy, any genre of comedy that you're not keen on? Is there something that just doesn't float your boat at all? It could be, I don't know, slapstick or
Um, I have to say, with the comedy work that I've been in, I'm really
yeah.
proud of it. I love Friday Night Dinner. I love Robert Popper's
Just
writing.
about to come on to that. Yeah,
Amazing. Matt Berry in Toast of London, absolutely my humour. Um, I'm not keen on, and I feel really bad saying this, but like slapstick, never
yeah,
got. Ken
yeah.
Dodd, never got. I
No,
never got Ken Dodd. He
yeah.
never did it for me.
Not
I
even with his not tickling stick, diddy
No,
men. Never
no,
got you. Never
no.
got
I
you.
was more
No.
Michael Benting's Potty Time, kind of weird
Yes.
but clever. It had to have a. I'm not that keen on slapstick. I'm not that keen on farce. For me, with sitcoms, for example, too much com and not enough sit. Always, you've got to believe the world and you've got to believe the characters. And that was the thing about Sean that was so good. Sean Locke was that he would do these ridiculously surreal, but it was based in any kind of reality. So
Yeah.
I think whatever you do, even if it's set on the moon with a bunch of Martians, as long as you set up believable characters in a believable world, you can do whatever you want with it. Slapstick, not for me, and super surreal without any basis in
Yeah.
reality.
You say about Michael Benting's Potty Time. Occasionally, I probably must have been one of the first people. I started posting little clips of it on social media, and he went absolutely ballistic. Obviously, you got half the people who were remembering, watching it back in the early 80s, late 70s, and a load of people just sort of saying in the comment, "What the is that? What the hell's that?" And then you're having to try and explain the genius of Michael Benteen and, et cetera, et cetera. It's wonderful bringing. I think that's we often say this in some of the episodes. That's one of the wonderful things about social media. You can bring these things back to life because everybody wants things in bite-sized clips. So you can play them 3 minutes of Michael Benteen's Potty Time. You can get a revival going. They're all on YouTube, every single episode. So you can, it's wonderful. But I'm so glad you said Michael Benteen's Potty Time.
I love your site. I love what you do on social media, and that's how I think we got to make. Because I
Definitely.
love what you post, because so much of it is nostalgia. So much of it is it's really funny. Your observations are funny, and you pick out these little gems that are long forgotten and go kind of remember this.
Just to bring them back to life. There should be there. And as I said, that's, because when we were kids, you had to have 2 or 3 channels or whatever, and it was an appointment to view. There was something magical about that, but there's also something magical about having everything there, at your fingertips. So we come on to Friday night dinners. How did Friday night dinner? How did that come about? Because you'd say Robert Popper, brilliant, but I also want to talk about Paul, because he's somebody who was just I thought he was fantastic, and again when he passed away, obviously far too young. There wasn't enough of a hoo-ha made about his life. He was a bit of a genius, I think.
A total genius.
Yeah.
I Friday Night Dinner's writing is fantastic because it comes from truth and it comes from Robert's family. The actors were all at the top of their game, but the person that grounded that series for me and made it so took it up a whole other level was Paul Ritter, because everything Paul did. I remember seeing him in a film called The Limehouse Golem and Chernobyl, obviously, and Friday Night Dinner, and everything he ever did. He was a genius. He was a class act. He just brought such a level of truth to everything. And again, you could stretch and stretch and stretch that character, but he always played it so like he was playing Hamlet in every situation that he was in. So even if he was lying naked on the floor, having tried to catch a plastic bag up a tree, which was an entire episode, was Martin trying to get a plastic bag out of a tree.
Yeah.
He was utterly mesmerizing. And the other thing, behind the scenes, he was a very, very contemplative, very thoughtful man, really so intelligent and very political and really interesting, but very, quite quiet and thoughtful. But on set, he often had to do the most terrible things, like being covered in sort of a tin of meat, or being completely naked from the chest down, or being covered in water.
He was almost always naked from the chest because he was always hot, wasn't he?
He was always
He sort of had flushes.
And we were often filming, very late at night in winter, be like -3 winds coming through Mill Hill. And he never complained. He was utterly professional. And he led that cast. Really.
What's the most joyous company you've ever been part of, whether it be radio, TV, theatre? Let's do them. Let's do each one separately. Let's do theatre, where everybody's just clicked and made each other smile and laugh.
I was very lucky to be in a production at the National Theatre called Edmund by David Mamet, which Ken Branagh was in. And that was a joy because it was about 60 minutes all the way through. It was on the Olivier stage. It was Ken Branagh's first time back on stage in 15 years. There was no interval. You were in the pub by 9 o'clock. It started at 8. Everybody, the world and his wife, came to see it, from all the Americans. We had like Sam Pesci and Mamet and all these incredible people coming to see it. And that was I'm still very, very close friends with a lot of people from that. That was a company that really bonded. I have to say the Toast of London lot, I'm still almost very, very close friends with Adrian Lucas, and I love Harry and Rob Bathurst. When you're in something very special and a little bit culty, I think it gives you a dynamic. I'm trying to think theatre-wise. My Merchant of Venice cast, because I think I produced that, and that also came out of my heart. So I think that was a very bonding experience. I'm trying to think so many, but I have to say the Toast of London crew, we know that we were onto something very special there.
How did that come about in the first place? How did you get involved in that?
I got a phone call from my agent saying, and so they sent me the script for the pilot, where it just said Mrs. Purchase is being taken from behind by Stephen Toast. And I remember reading it, and I think I just had my daughter, and I just wrote back and went, I'm not doing this. I said, I can see the way this is going. My poor little daughter's going to end up with me. No, I'm not doing it. So I turned it down, and then I think they came back again and said, oh, have a read. It's really funny. And I was like, I don't get it. What?
Yeah.
Went in, met Matt, we rehearsed it with Harry. We had like one scene with this weird, surreal box. The designer on it was Lucia Santamaria, who's brilliant. We filmed the pilot and I suddenly got it. It was like, oh, this is really funny. We all assumed Arthur Matthews, who I'd known from Big Train, was writing it with Matt. It was funny. It was like a surreal hinterland of the acting world. It sort of took the out of voiceovers. It sort of took the out of actors, the pomposity. It was sort of set in a hinterland of the sort of 70s and 80s, but also today. It was really poking the stick at archetypes. But I do remember coming off that thinking, I love this job. Everyone's funny. Matt's obsessed with EastEnders. He loved all my stories about EastEnders and working with Dirty Den and many a funny tale there. came away and we all just went, well, that was fun. Nice to meet you. This will never get picked up. And it did get picked up. And then we did the next series and they brought Mrs. Purchase back again. And then I remember I wasn't going to go to the screening of that because I think I was only in one episode. I remember Matt ringing me personally saying, you got to come down to the to Channel 4. We're doing a screening. I really think you should come. We're showing your episode. And I came and I saw the Bruce Forsyth episode. Do you remember that one?
Yes,
where the girl comes in
absolutely.
for plastic surgery.
Yeah.
And she wants to be a model and they turn her into Bruce Forsyth and all she's left with is and Bobby Bathurst. And I just remember sitting next to Kevin Eldon and laughing so hard. And then they showed the episode that I had done with when I'm in bed with Matt, and then Harry Peacock comes in and the shooting, and it was all about Michael Ball. And I remember just thinking, wow, this is brilliant, brilliant, and meeting lots of lovely people. And then I got the second series and he wrote much more for Mrs. Purchase. And I think there was a third series and we did the Blow football. So that felt very special. That was how I got involved. Originally thinking, this is weird. Then thinking, well, I'll do it. I love Matt Berry. I love this cast. It's never going anywhere. And then sort of having dads at the school gates wanting to come up and talk and going.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. Just back to Robert Popper. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Down the Line?
Yeah. Yes.
What was the character he played in Baal? The one with the squid, the Baal. He played, I think it was Baal or something like that. But that's something I haven't watched or listened to for years. But it was absolutely, I need to go back to that. I need to go back to Down the Line.
So good. And and also just the thing he did with Pete as well, taking that 1970s educational. What was it called?
God, Olivia Colman was in it.
Olivia was in it. It was brilliant. Like there's education.
Look around you.
Look
around you. Yeah.
So good. So, Robert's a genius. I mean, he used to ring me up and go, I've just written a really good episode with you in it with a dead fox. And I was like, right, how's that going? He's going, oh yeah, I've really laughed as I've been writing it. I love Robert. He's having worked with David Mamet and then he worked with Robert. I always say he's the David Mamet of the comedy world, because with Mamet, every full stop and comma, he writes it like music, and you have to honor. Oh no, I think you played 3 dots there, not 2 dots.
Yeah.
Or it's all about the music, and it's the same with Robert. When they were, our Friday night dinner those scripts were written like music, and he would go, I think you'll find there's a comma there and dash. Then you come in, and it just overlapped like music, and he was very, very strict about how you perform that, and he was 100% right, which is why those scripts work so well.
We were talking to Hugh Bonville a few weeks ago, and he was saying about W1A and about the fact that was written in exactly the same way.
John Morton.
Exactly the same way. Everything, every gesture, everything, every utterance was scripted. Has comedy or laughter ever helped you through a difficult time?
Yeah. My dad dropped dead in my arms, my darling father, who I was very close to. And if you could have picked my personal worst trauma, it would have been my father dropping dead in my young arms and then having to drag his dead body down the stairs and then give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and wait for the ambulance to come for 20 minutes. It was a nightmare. But my dad was the worst hypochondriac ever, the worst hypochondriac. You get a cold and that was it. He was dying. And I just remember coming back from the hospital and having to inform the family that he had died and he wasn't coming back. And somehow we got hysterical because really, really laughed at his terrible hypochondria and the fact that every single day of his life he'd wake up and go, well, that's it, I'm dying. And it was like, and then he did. And then he did.
Shouldn't laugh, sorry.
No, and and he was.
And then he did.
And then he did. But he was so funny and so witty, and a lot of his humour, just surreal things over the. Like in when you're Jewish and somebody dies, you bury them very quickly, and then you have a shiva where people will come to the house for 7 days. And he was very, very hot, and because he was so young and he was very well loved, lots and lots of people were coming to the house during this shiva. And I remember them standing behind my mother, literally looking at the house, going, literally, he just died very suddenly the day before, going, she's not going to want to live here on her own, is she? Do you think she'll sell it? Ask her. It's like, I'm not going to. I won't do it now. And literally discussing how much they thought that the house was worth. Do they think she'd sell it? When's a good time to ask? So much humour.
That's brilliant. have you ever met any of your comedy heroes? Like somebody you know, because obviously you worked with probably people like Robert Popper, etc., etc. David Mamet, not necessarily a comedy hero, but is there anybody you've met you think, God, yes, perfect. I've really wanted to meet you, and it made you laugh.
I've been really lucky because I've done little things in lots of big people. So I remember, do you remember back in the day when Rob Brydon had the breakthrough with Marion and Jeff?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when they then did a small summer party, I came in to play a really small cameo as Marion. So I got to work with Coogan and Rob and all that kind of comedy world. And I'm just trying to think if I've ever worked with any. When I look back at the people I've worked with, I feel through the comedy world, anybody who was anybody in comedy, I kind of got to work with,
Yeah,
and also amazing careers. Benny Wong, when he started out, I now look at him in all these amazing, massive films,
yeah,
remembering working with him and Sean Locke. I think
yeah,
Sean
yeah,
Locke was a personal hero.
yeah.
Um, I would, uh, Quentin Tarantino's over in London at the moment, I have to say, and I think he's doing a play, which is a bit on the hush hush, but I know he's here, and I'm trying to find a way of getting to him because I want to tell him what a genius he is, because a lot of his films really make me laugh, as
Yeah.
awful as they are. I still think of Inglourious Basterds, which I think has some of the sort of weirdest, darkest laughs,
Yeah.
and I think all his films have. I think there's a vein of comedy that runs through his horror, which I think is great. I remember meeting Ellie Roth, and we became kind of social media friends, and then we're sort of texting behind the scenes. I think he's great. Amy Schumer's, I admire enormously.
Yeah.
And we ended up on a WhatsApp group, so I'm hoping at some point to meet her and Sarah Silverman, um, uh, and Jerry Seinfeld. So a
Wow.
lot of the Americans I would love to meet, but in this country, I can't say that there isn't a comedy hero. I remember working with Graham Garden. I remember working with Bill Oddie on some
That's what I'm saying.
radios.
Just this, it's so prolific,
God,
just ridiculous.
one of
It's
my favorite things ever. My sister and
God.
I were obsessed with Carry On Abroad when we were little. Do you remember Carry On
Of
Abroad?
course, I remember carrying about. I can quote the whole script verbatim.
So, do you
Yeah.
remember the scene with June Whitfield with "Would you like a glass of wine?" And thanks, I tried it once and didn't like
Didn't
it.
like it. Yeah.
Cigarette? Oh no, I tried it once
Yeah.
and didn't like it. My daughter's the same. Your only child, I presume.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
working with
Yeah.
June Whitfield on a radio sitcom. We did a number, and I made her reenact that
Did
scene
you?
with me
That's amazing.
uh,
That is so
every
fantastic.
single day. And I just wish in those days that I had videoed it and put it on social media. I mean, imagine reenacting that scene with June.
Oh my God. Again, that's another one when you post it, everybody piles in. But again, the amount of people who say, what's that from? No
Oh.
idea. People from overseas, etc. It's just incredible. But she was fantastic. She was
Amazing.
she was a
Brilliant.
formidable actress. She could do anything.
Anything. And in that same sitcom, and nobody will know who she is, but she was a bit of a hero, Pat Coombs.
Oh, what? I'll send it to you. I have a photograph of Pat Coombs and a chimpanzee. And seriously, it's the funniest thing ever. It really, really is. And it's something I post it sometimes just to sort of, Monday morning, this will cheer you up. And it's just the man. She's herself laughing, and there's this sort of like PG Tips chimp next to her. I absolutely love Pat Coombs. I'm so glad you mentioned her.
Love Packers. But I have to say, of all the comedy gods, the one, and I think the world is real. I mean, it all went in a handcart when David Bowie died and was taken back by the mothership. Where the world will actually end is when Mel Brooks goes, because he is my absolute all-time favorite. His worldview, who he is as a person, his writing. I'm obsessed with the producers, as I said. Blazing Saddles, every film he's ever made. I am obsessed with his writing, his scripts. I wrote a play about the making of The Graduate in the same year as they made The Graduate with his lovely wife, Anne Bancroft, who I played. He was also directing the producers.
Have you met him?
Nearly. And somebody gave him my
Really?
play. I am so... If you're out there, Mel Brooks, please let me meet you at some point.
He's still in decent health, though.
I
I think
think
he's
he is.
still talking to, you see him popping up here,
I
there, and
know.
everywhere.
He's frail and he's very old, but I think he is the man. The world is a better place while he's still in it.
Yeah, you're right. I think he's probably is at the very, very top of the world comedy tree, and has been for a while. Do you have a favourite film, Mel Brooks film?
I
I
do.
fluctuate. I'm like Monty Python films. I fluctuate.
Yeah,
But go on.
Monty Python. Gee, I mean, I'm the
Yeah,
same. I'm the same
go
with
on.
Monty Python. God,
Yeah,
I still think. I still think because it had such an impact on me, the original producers, not the musical, the
yeah,
original producers, I think is one of my all-time favorite desert island
yeah,
films, closely followed by Blazing Saddles, which is
yeah.
just brilliant because there's always a bite in what he says, a little bit like early Sacha Baron Cohen comment, with Borat. There's always a bite in everything that Mel does, which is sort of just slightly saying, as funny as it is, look at the social comment that I'm making underneath it.
Yeah. Despite you're very prolific in comedy, you've done so much. Is there an itch yet to be scratched within the world of comedy?
Yes, I think I would very much like to write something with as I found my voice more and more as a writer. And I
Yeah.
was often asked back in the day, oh, you should be writing something, you're like, I was part of that early Julia Davis crowd. And it was like, right. And I never had the confidence to do it. I've got the confidence now. So I think I would like to write um, something that comes out of my world and my worldview that could go on, probably female led. I don't even necessarily have to be in it, but I think a kind of where we're at now, satirical comedy, but with a
Also,
bite.
yeah. Well, there you go. So you will. That's something but it's an itch you can scratch, which is fantastic. So it's not you. No,
You
go on,
just
off you
need the
pop. Go and
commissioners,
write it.
James. I will
Yeah,
write it. It's just
go
getting
on.
it on the telly. Because I
Yeah.
have to say, James, depressingly, talking about nostalgia, I just don't think we make stuff like that. I don't think that well, number one, there's not the platform. Number two, there's not the freedom. Number three, people are because it's so expensive,
Yeah.
there's not the bravery that there was. And I think comedy has been slightly constricted. Would you agree?
I would definitely, because I forget who we were talking to, but somebody mentioned the fact that oh God, who was it? They'd done a comedy, but they'd done a drama, but it was sort of a comedy drama, and it'd been done by the comedy department, and because it had been done by the comedy department, the budget was virtually nothing. Whereas had it been in the drama department, it would have had everything thrown at it. So no, it was ever thus. That's why social media is so important. But it's all stand-up these days, and people doing sort of skits, content. I mean, how often does a Friday night dinner or a toast come
I know.
around?
And you see, I think I love John Morton's stuff, and because I did quite a lot of his early stuff, like I said, the Sunday Format, and Chris, who shall not be mentioned,
Yes. Yeah.
but the People Like Us and things like that really witty observation. I love John Morton's writing, and I love Toast, but where I think they work so well, and Friday Night Dinner, is they had fantastic actors in them. You need really good actors. And whilst I think stand-up is a great place to start, and you can be a brilliant stand-up, like Catherine Tate started off doing stand-up, but she trained as an actor. I think sometimes when you get a really tight, good script, you need good actors to sell it.
Yeah. I was supposed to ask you this earlier. Have you ever laughed when you shouldn't have? Has laughing ever got you into trouble?
Yeah, I just did a very serious play at the Chocolate Factory called The Holy Rosenbergs, which is about the hilarious subject of the Israel-Gaza conflict and a family. It was really good, and it did have moments of comedy in it, but something happened on stage in a really heated moment. I think a woman sort of walked across the stage, and I just went hysterical, and I don't normally do that. Me and the actress Dorothea Meyer Bennett, we started laughing so hard we had to walk off the stage to calm down, to then come back on.
Oh,
That wasn't very good. Um,
bloody hell.
at my great grandmother's funeral, she was a tiny woman, 4'9", 4'10". She was tiny. She shrunk as these. She was like nearly 100. They put her in a 6-foot coffin. So as they put her in, you just heard this thud as her head hit one way. and then,
Sorry.
no,
That's
it was
fantastic. That is brilliant. That is,
terrible. And then they had to
oh,
lift her up, and then she thudded back the other way. So I mean, things like that, and you're like,
so,
yeah,
Jesus Christ, I'm like,
yeah.
that's wonderful. Right, we're nearing the end, and I always finish off. We can't do a desert island because the Beeb have got that. You're going to the moon. You can take one person with you who's going to make you laugh, but he's also going to give you a bit of space. So they'll bugger off occasionally. You're going to make you laugh. You can take a TV show
Oh my goodness.
And you can take a book.
Do you know who I would take? Who I
Go
think
on.
is one of the funniest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And she makes me laugh so much. Letitia Dean, who plays
Really?
Sharon Watts in EastEnders. She is the campest, funniest, driest person I have ever met. She honestly makes me squeal with laughter. So I'd probably take Letitia.
Oh, brilliant.
Because somehow
Fantastic.
between us on the space station of just us being in there, number one, she just would make me laugh my off, and number two, but somehow we both of us managed to make some sort of like wedge-heeled raffia, sort of wedge heel, and make it into a sort of, I know she's just very, very camp. It's like being with a gay man.
Yeah.
So probably her, and failing her, my very dear friend Harvey Bertram Brown, who is super camp and super funny and very clever. So I take him, or Mel Brooks if he was able to find. But yeah, Letitia Dean I would take. There you
Yeah.
go. I would take Letitia
Okay.
Dean as my person.
Yeah.
What was the other thing?
A film?
Oh, I'd take the producers.
The producers, obviously. And then...
Actually, the producers, can I have two? Or,
yeah, Coscam.
or Brazil. The
Brazil.
Terry Brazil is
Yeah,
one of my...
yeah.
Terry,
And a book, and a book?
Doesn't have to be a comedy.
It's got to make you laugh. It's got to make you laugh.
Mein Kampf. No, that was a joke. No. Have you seen that Sarah Silverman about saying my struggle? She goes, is that not the most Jewish title you've ever heard? My
That's brilliant.
struggle. I think the book I would take, I mean, there are so many, I don't even know where to start, but weirdly, what has just popped into my mind, because it had such an influence on me back in the day, and I admired it so much, was Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, fantastic. Incidentally, have you read Coward's Diaries?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would take Noel Coward's Diaries.
Yeah. And have you read that?
No, I wouldn't. I would take... Oh my gosh, now you've got me. I would take Kenneth Williams's diaries.
Oh my God! Do you know? I'm helping to write the libretto of an opera about Kenneth Williams at the moment, with a director called Gerald. Funnily enough, with the director called Gerald Thomas, who's the namesake of the Carry On director.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, bizarre.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, so that's in production at the moment. But yeah, Kenneth Williams and the Noel Coward letters are very interesting as well. So tell us, before we go, Present Laughter starts with the Waitrose tour, starts in Bath when?
It starts in Bath on the 28th of August.
Yeah.
It's 2 weeks in Bath, and then it's going on a national tour, including Malvern, York, Chichester, Cheltenham, all over, Liverpool, Chichester. Anyway, have a look.
We can have a look. This online.
You can have a look.
Is it going you to the West End?
We're hoping, we're planning, and but please come and see it. It's really funny. If you like Toast of London, I think you'll like what I've done with it. I've sort of given it a different view. I've given it a female Jerry Essendine. I've set it in Studio 54, 1977 in New York, and it's given it a bit of a fresh lease of life, but all keeping the brilliance of Noel Coward's wit and comedy, of which many people have copied.
What a place to finish. Tracy-Ann Oberman, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you, James.